Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer podcast. This is Deb McBride, and I am in the lovely, beautiful, fabulous Escazú, Costa Rica on June 1st, Sunday, June 1st, in the year 2025. May is over. June is here. This is the first day of June. The first week of June is upon us, and we have had the first week of Saturn in Aries. Saturn went into Aries last weekend, and it has been an interesting ride this first week. We've got four things in Aries right now. We've got Saturn and Neptune, as you know, that have recently entered Aries at the very beginning of Aries. And today, Venus and Chiron, which have been in Aries, have met in Aries. Okay, so we've got four things in Aries. I want to say planets because three of them are a planet and one of them is a comet. And that would be Chiron. 4:11 this afternoon, Venus and Chiron met. And I felt that. I felt that yesterday. I felt it very strongly yesterday, but I am a Venus-Chiron conjunction. And if you are a Venus-Chiron conjunction, this is the moment you are going to have what we call a recurrence, which you've heard here before. Not many people and astrologers know about recurrence. It's really important. It's an important part of astrology. The only place I have ever heard it talked about was by my teacher, Michael Luton. And we've read other books. I mean, my colleagues at that time were saying, well, we never heard anyone talk about recurrence. All the conferences I went to, all the astrology events I went to, all the lectures, no one talked about recurrence. And I don't know if Michael created this or he learned this from an older astrologer back when he was much younger, but it reflects what's going on in the sky with your chart. So this would be if you've got a Venus Chiron in your chart, for example, and this could be any planet combination. When you've got something in your chart and it happens in the sky, you're going to resonate to that. And depending on what it is and what it's done in your life, it's going to cause ripples and waves and things. And maybe it's going to be something really good, and maybe something remembrances of things past. And maybe it's going to be something complicated like this Venus Chiron. Now, it's not always complicated for me, but this one was particularly complicated. And I think it was compounded by the fact that Saturn has entered Aries. So what I want to say about that is Saturn's already smacked us upside the head with lessons about itself in Aries. And, like I said, and like I've been saying, Saturn doesn't necessarily like to be in Aries. Saturn doesn't want to be in Aries. Saturn has to pass through Aries like other planets do. But this is something unusual because we're getting it at the same time Neptune is going there for the first time in 165 years. So technically, Saturn and Neptune are conjunct, and they are not exact until next February, but it doesn't matter. They are conjunct. And so, what we are dealing with is this conjunction. Maybe we'll feel things more strongly next February, but Aries is the first sign. It is the initiator. It is the one. It's the leader. It opens the path for everybody else. And when Aries is present with planets such as Saturn and Neptune, we're thinking in terms of those types of energies. And, Saturn is going to teach us things. Neptune's going to erode the old perceptions of Aries and our old perceptions of that area of our zodiac, of our horoscope. But Neptune is more compassionate, empathic, sensitive, dreamy, creative, visual. Saturn is more lesson-oriented, patriarchal, and it's going to show us things that might not be comfortable. And I certainly witnessed that this week. Now, what I want to say about this is Saturn, like I said, is where we've learned lessons, and we've already been whacked around a bit as far as lessons just in a week. What do we know about Aries? We know it's the initiator, the first one, the one that steps forward. We also know that sometimes for Aries, the lesson is take care of yourself first, then take care of other people. Okay? Take care when appropriate. If your child is bleeding, you've got to take care of your kid, right? But you've got to take care of yourself, and it's walking the fine line between taking care of your needs, not giving too much energy to everyone else in lieu of yourself. You're not taking care of yourself, but you're taking care of everybody else. And Aries can do that just as much as Pisces. Aries has to learn the lesson about independence and autonomy and, not people pleasing just as much as Libra. So it's important to be that way. Now there are some Aries, and there is some Aries energy floating around that could be selfish. So there's the fine line between being selfish and taking care of yourself, being unselfish and giving to others, but not giving to the point where it hurts you. Or hurts somebody else. So we want to walk that fine line, and this Saturn in Aries is already rolling out the lessons relative to walking that fine line. What is the lesson you have to learn about, taking care of your needs and then taking care of other people's needs, or your child or your animal or whatever, whoever relies on you. Who relies on you? Maybe your elderly parents, grandparents rely on you, relatives. And so where do you find that place in between taking care of you and taking care of them? And not being selfish, but being selfish enough, being self-oriented enough to know that you can't go starving to help someone. You've got to take care of your needs. It's like that point when you're about to take off on a flight and they say, see to your needs first and then to those of your children or whoever when you're going to put on the oxygen mask. If you need to put on the oxygen mask, hopefully no one needs to put on the oxygen mask, but they give you the instructions about that. See to your needs first, and then like kids who can't really do it themselves. Okay, so you got to do you first so that you can help the child and not faint, right? Pass out from the lack of oxygen. My friend uses that on his Make Love to You podcast. It's about self-love. And he says he always uses that as an example. And it's the truth. We do have to take care of ourselves initially in order to be able to help others. So this is one of the lessons of Saturn in Aries. The other lesson is, there's more. There's going to probably be 100 more. But this week has already shown me that we need to manage our anger. And we need to be aware of our anger, aware of what triggers our anger, conscious of what triggers our anger, and dealing and taking responsibility for our anger. People think Aries is automatically angry. Everybody's got anger, everybody, but it might show up a whole lot when the planets tend to be in Aries more than in other signs. Like I said, we've got 4 things in Aries right now. So there's nothing like floating through there like the moon. We have Venus and Chiron and Saturn and Neptune, and they are also bringing us, not just Saturn, they're all bringing us this lesson in managing our anger. And when it's appropriate to let it out, and when it's appropriate to take it home and deal with it. And I don't believe that we should not get angry, and we should never get angry. That's just unhealthy. That's going to back up in your body and cause health problems. That's just not going to be good. So you have to maintain a certain consciousness and awareness around your anger, and to not let it get the better of you. But because boy, oh boy, can anger just creep out of nowhere and blow up. And the impulsiveness of it is what is the problem. Like if you're like, okay, I'm good and angry right now, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to go breathe, or I'm going to go for a walk. Or if it's like not a time to do those things, go breathe. It's time to breathe anywhere, anytime. We are always breathing. Go step into your bathroom, close the door, and breathe. Go get a glass of water. But when anger surfaces and it starts bubbling to in front of your face, you want to pay a good amount of attention to what's triggering this and why. And it just started to rain here finally. Anger really is valuable, and there is a sacred anger, and there is dealing with the expression of it, which is very important. In mythology, there is the goddess Kali, Kali, or Kali Ma. And Kali is someone who is an angry goddess, but she expresses the anger. This is something that's really worth looking at. Now, if you're a man and you're not like looking at goddesses, then perhaps you need to go look into the mythology of maybe Zeus, because when he got angry, like he caused storms and things to happen. But these are good analogies and places to look. Mythology is always great to go back and look at what can be done and expressed in a healthy manner. And so I really find that these mythological tales really help us understand and cope with our emotions on a regular basis. Anger is nothing to be afraid of. It's important. It's telling us things. It's showing us what we need to address, because our emotions cannot be ignored. And we need to be very aware that the anger's got a story for us. Where did you first feel this? Why are you feeling this? Who's making you angry? Because they've infringed upon your boundaries somewhere. Saturn's also about boundaries. So Saturn, being in Aries, is going to say, okay, my anger needs to have a boundary. I can get mad to a point, and then I've got to go solve this, cope with it on my own. Very important to be aware of. Very important. And, having Saturn there is going to teach us some things about our anger. I highly recommend a book by Syma Kharal, Syma Kharal, Kharal. She wrote a book called Goddess Reclaimed, and there's a whole chapter devoted to Kali and how a healthy expression of Kali and working with Kali can help you get hold of your anger and work with it and express it in a way that is constructive. She does other goddesses in that book as well, and I have found Syma's work to be very relevant. I followed her for a long time. I have. She's got a website, flourishinggoddess.com, and she gives a lot of, she is like goddess work. That's what she does. And so some of the other healers I work with also deal with the goddesses, and I've been in this class Femme Fatale with Melanie Layer, and she talks about the divinity within, and we all have divinity. Everybody, male or female, we all have divinity, but mostly it's this is a class for women, so we're talking about the divinity within as goddess and going and meeting our goddess. And so these mythologies really help, I think, because they're a story outside of us, and they show us how to navigate these emotions, and going and expressing them in a nice, healthy way. And I don't always think that pounding a pillow is the nice, healthy way. Maybe sometimes it is. My late partner used to say he thought that just enraged us more, and he was a therapist, so he didn't always think that was the best way to solve it. Sometimes you have to do that, but as a solution, I can't say that I have found that works either. I think you have to get to the root of what it is. Maybe in the beginnings you can pound your pillow and scream, but that's not bad. It's just, if it doesn't work for you, if you're still angry after that, then you want to get deeper into where it's coming from and what's triggering it and what's triggering it regularly. Like regularly I get triggered because XYZ. So you can manage it better, you can navigate it better, you can work with healing things better. And by the way, another thought occurred to me. I was thinking about healers, and I referred my shaman to someone, a few people. I always refer him, but he's really good. He's a great healer, but he's a shaman, and he does very powerful work. He's not somebody you go to every week, but he's someone that you go to when you've got a specific situation, especially things otherworldly going on, and energetically you need a good cleanup. When I think about him, I think, you go over to him, he solves a problem, he gets things moving, and you go on. When I think about someone you go to healing regularly, and you regularly do a few sessions with them, they're working with you. Like when I went to my regression therapist, and my late partner, well, he was a regression therapist, you go to them for a certain amount of time. Not necessarily a therapist is going to do that, but a healer. You should go to a healer if you need some things healed and stuff. My point is, healing takes time, okay? My shaman does like a one-off cleanup, get rid of the entities, the things, the energetics that are stopping you, those kinds of things. But a healer, it's funny, people think, can I go once and be like healed? No. No. You're not going to go once and be healed. When I do emotional clearings and emotional stuff for people and Reiki and things, what I do is, I do one session, but it's advisable to keep going. If you are coming to me, or going to someone for healing, not therapy, going to a therapist, healing takes time. Therapy takes a long time, but I always think it's better to go to a healer because it's accelerated. And there should be techniques and tools and methods that help work out the energy. These things take time, go a few times, go to a healer a bunch of times. You can't go once or twice and think it's all finished. There's things, sometimes you can go a couple of times and it gets worked out. And, I saw somebody for a session, I'll go back in a month or something like that. But, you are not going to be healed of decades of stuff from one healing session. But you might be after. Like when I went to regression therapy 33 years ago, I went every week for 2 hours for 6 months. And then after that, I went, every 2 weeks, and then eventually every month. And then eventually, my therapist moved away, so I couldn't continue to go. But it was very helpful, and you get it. When you're in the mode of healing, you are going every week to connect with that healing space, and you're getting healed. Okay. Healing, I think, like I said, is faster and more accelerated than going to therapy. Therapy, especially if you're just talking, I don't know how much surfaces in that process. Sometimes you just need to talk. That's definitely helpful. But in any case, so I was thinking about that, and healing in the fact that Venus Chiron is when we want to see ourselves getting some healing. And if you experience some things during this Venus Chiron, you may recognize where you need a little more healing to be done, rather than, spot healing, healing once and then 2 years later healing again. But what's interesting is, I think Saturn stepping into Aries this week has brought up the things that Venus and Chiron are asking us to heal, and the wounds that we have, and why the wounds need our attention right now. So Venus and Chiron are asking us, like, okay, what are you looking at right now that needs some healing, and what is it that you need to work on in this moment that's going to get you to a better place, that helps you manage your anger, and manage your emotions, and heal your anger, and have your boundaries, and everything I just described, So I think Venus and Chiron are going to bring that to our attention, along with Saturn, all that Aries stuff that's going on right now. Every sign needs its healing and its type of healing. So we have to be aware of that and be conscious of it. Interesting week ahead, because we'll get more of the same. Now Venus and Chiron will be finished after today, and we'll be moving into more understanding of the energies of Saturn and Aries with Neptune in Aries. Venus is going to leave Aries this week. On Thursday the 5th, she's going to move into Taurus at 9:43 p.m. Pacific time. She's really moving in 12:43 a.m. Friday the 6th Eastern time. And of course, if you're in other regions of the world, such as Europe or Australia, you are going to get Venus moving into Taurus on Friday the 6th. So yes, that's a strong shift because she is moving into one of her favorite signs. She loves Taurus. Taurus is beautiful for Venus. It is the earth mother goddess, earthy nature fertility qualities of Venus. But the day that she moves into Taurus, the moon moves into Scorpio. So the other goddess, the lunar goddess, is moving into Scorpio at 10:23 p.m. Friday the 6th. And of course, that's opposite Venus in Taurus. And moon doesn't like to be in Scorpio, but it has to do it once a month. And so it's going to oppose Venus a few hours later. Actually, it will oppose Venus at 12:22 a.m. Saturday the 7th Eastern Time. And so all of this fertility goddess energy is going to be questioned by the moon. So the goddesses are going to be in a little bit of a duel in that time. And very interestingly, she's going to have a conversation in an opposition as they both enter new signs. So Venus is in her annual visit to her own sign, and this is great for doing creative things, being in nature, really being in nature, and standing on the earth, getting grounded. If you can do that barefoot, that's a really good thing. That's very helpful. And getting grounded really helps you actually get connected to your emotions and have a place for them to go. The electricity of the earth under your feet feels really great. If you can do that, it's going to help you sort of diffuse a lot of this anger we're dealing with and these new angers we might be feeling. Like suddenly Saturn and Neptune are making you aware that, yes, I have anger too, and I'm not exempt. So this whole experience of Venus moving into Taurus is going to help us process our emotions better. She's very grounded there, very helpful there. But she's also no longer in Aries, a sign she doesn't really like. And so as she moves into this place of, fertility and one of her homes, she is going to really help us get very connected to our earthy qualities and our earthy desires and our earthy values and stuff. And that's important because it can't be all heady. We got a lot in air right now. A lot. Okay. There's Pluto in air, the Sun and Mercury in air. We've got Jupiter still in air. And then we've got like things in fire. So everything in the sky, except for Uranus in Taurus, which is like a joke. Uranus in Taurus. It's in Taurus, but and as I've been saying, we've been moving out of water and earth, and we're moving into fire and air. And sometimes we need a little earth to just get us back down to the grounding of our energies. Electricity needs grounding. It can't work without being grounded. So that connection to planet Earth and Mother Earth is going to be very valuable as Venus goes into Taurus later in the week. And it's going to help us process all of this stuff, this energy that's flying around so quickly. Everything is just going so quickly. The moon is in Leo right now with Mars. It's been dancing with Mars. And, if you are dealing with those anger energies, yeah, you can bet that the moon on Mars really had a hand in some of that as well. So yeah, and it's very important to maintain some level of peace as we get through navigating all these wild emotions that could come up while things are in fire and air. And again, think before you speak, think before you act. It's important to do that. It's important to do that. Now, some very interesting stuff is happening a week from now as we move through the first week of June. So Mercury, planet of communication and writing, speaking, networking, dialoguing, all good things like a Gemini energy would be, is moving out of its own sign and moving into the sign of Cancer. And that's 6:58 p.m. Sunday the 8th. So that's the next time we will be together on this podcast. Now, what's so interesting is last week on my podcast, I said Mercury's moving into Gemini. And here we are a week later. I'm saying, by the way, next week, Mercury's moving into Cancer. Mercury's going to spend 2 weeks in its own sign, flying through its own sign, and then going into the sign of Cancer. So that's going to be more water in the sky, because we don't have a lot of water in the sky right now because everything's left Pisces. And so that's going to help us process emotions too, because, Cancer's not exactly communicative. They are not communicative people. You don't know what's going on with them. You have to guess, read their mind, read their field, read their cards to get a sense of what's really happening for them emotionally. Even though they're a water sign, they don't necessarily give it over. So Mercury could help with that situation. But right before Mercury enters the sign of Cancer, it's going to make a conjunction to Jupiter in its own sign of Gemini, Mercury's own sign of Gemini. Mercury and Jupiter will meet in Gemini for the last time at 4:12 p.m. next Sunday the 8th. And that's going to be it for the next 12 years, because Jupiter's leaving Gemini and going into the sign of Cancer, just like Mercury. So Jupiter's not going to come back to Gemini for another 12 years, but Mercury is meeting it at the end of the sign, stepping into Cancer, and then Monday, the 9th of June, Jupiter is entering Cancer at 5:02 p.m. So that's a week from tomorrow. But that's important because it's a year-long cycle. So we've had Jupiter and Gemini all this time. It's very important to pay attention to this because we are starting a whole new year ahead for Jupiter, who has not been in the sign of Cancer in 12 years. So why is this important? Well, it's always important because Jupiter's changing signs. So once a year, Jupiter changes signs, not like Mercury every few weeks, but Jupiter is changing signs and going into Cancer, and that is where Jupiter is exalted. We like Jupiter in Cancer. Hurrah. So this is good for the Cancerians out there, the Capricorns, the Libras, the Aries. Jupiter is going into Cancer. Hurrah. And we all will benefit from Jupiter in Cancer. Where is Cancer in your astrological chart? Where do you have Cancer? The beginning of Cancer. And that is going to show you where Jupiter's going and where Jupiter is going to give you information and good luck and fortune and abundance and expansion. This is the last full week of Jupiter in Gemini that we will have for the next 12 years. So if you have planets at the end of Gemini, you'll feel this. End of Sagittarius, you'll feel this. Virgo, Pisces, you'll feel this. But this is the end. Jupiter's leaving. Jupiter's going into Cancer. And so when I say that things are moving into more air and fire, we have to balance the elements, and this is going to help us balance those elements with Jupiter and Cancer. Now, that doesn't mean that we're all going to be like grabbing our tissue box and wiping our eyes every day. It means that thankfully we will have some watery element going on to balance all this other stuff and to open our hearts. Jupiter in Cancer is great for opening your heart. Opening up, not hiding behind your emotions, and feeling things. So if it's been a little bit of a bumpy ride already with Saturn in Aries and dealing with anger or Neptune, suddenly anger is bubbling to the surface. Yeah, Neptune. It's like a volcano. Yeah. That's going to help us with Jupiter in Cancer. Yes, Jupiter squares Aries. Jupiter in Cancer will square Aries, and Saturn and Jupiter will make their last square to one another. Remember, they started squaring each other last year from Gemini to Pisces. That is an interesting thing because that was like 8-10 months ago. And now they're going to finally, I remember last year talking about it on this very podcast, that it's a really long time that we have to wait till Jupiter and Saturn are going to square one another again. And the 15th, in 2 weeks, on Father's Day in the U.S., or maybe it's Father's Day universally, but Sunday the 15th, that's when Jupiter and Saturn are going to square each other for the last time. So we've had a bunch of that happened last year. They haven't squared each other since last year. They did it twice last year in the Pisces where Saturn was and Jupiter in Gemini. Now we're moving into the next realm for them. So that's cardinal signs rather than mutable. Cardinal are the initiators. Cancer, Aries. So big stuff. Jupiter's changing signs. This is one of the planets changing signs this year, the bigger planets that have longer cycles. So it's important to pay attention to this. Watch what happens as we get closer to Jupiter in Cancer. We're all going to start wanting comfort foods. That's one of the things that happens with Jupiter in Cancer. We start wanting all the things we associate with comfort. Mashed potatoes, spaghetti, hamburgers, French toast, pancakes, all the juicy, delicious things that come with comfort food. So if you start wanting comfort food, you know what's going on. Obviously, Jupiter in Gemini is more cerebral. So it's not thinking about that. It's like running a race. When we slow down and we go with that Jupiter in Cancer next week, it's like, oh, okay. For some reason, I want a hot chocolate and a big plate of mashed potatoes. And what is obviously the thing to do in cases like that? Yes, you can indulge some of it, but you also want to look at why you want comfort food. Why do you need comfort? What is it that's giving you the desire for comfort? Now, if it means just putting on your cozy sweater and your slippers and curling up by a fire, well, that's fine. That's good. That's a nice, cozy thing to have happen when Jupiter's in Cancer. We do look for comfort when planets go into Cancer, especially things like Jupiter. We do look for that comfort zone. And that does not mean staying comfortable, too comfortable that we don't move. We do want to expand and stretch your comfort zone. What are you comfortable with? What can your nervous system handle? What is your nervous system's limit? And maybe we're going to find out more of that with Jupiter squaring Saturn. What is the limit of your nervous system, and where do you need to push past that? Where do you need to really expand so that you can embrace abundance? Because that's one of the reasons we want to expand. We need to embrace abundance. We need to embrace things that are going to help us in our, live our lives. Abundance is a good thing. Jupiter in Cancer can be abundant. So the thing is to not gain weight when Jupiter's in Cancer. Connect with your family, connect with who you believe is family. I'm going to experience Jupiter in Cancer for the first time since I've moved here to Costa Rica. So home is a different experience for me than it was the last time Jupiter was in Cancer. So that's very interesting. Home and family are very different for me now. So I encourage you to sort of embrace what you feel is home and what you feel is family and what you feel is a sense of comfort for you as we approach Jupiter in Cancer. Because when I come back here on this podcast next Sunday, it's going to be practically upon us. It's going to really, 24 hours after that Mercury meets Jupiter and then goes into Cancer, Jupiter will be following Mercury doing the same. So they've caught up to one another. If you are interested in seeing my shaman, I highly recommend him. He is not available on the internet. He is only available through referrals like myself. He only works on WhatsApp. His name is Bear Claw. I've mentioned him before on this podcast. He's a profound healer. But he, like I said, is really good for processing some very unusual situations, like pulling entities out of your field and also legal stuff, things where you're stuck. I've had friends work with him to get out of places where they keep getting attacked legally by people unfairly, and he goes in and solves that. And I have never known anyone to solve that the way he does. So you can always write to me, deb@debmcbride.com, info@thegoldenastrologer.com, if you need some support, and I can sort of turn you in his direction if we feel that's really the right thing and necessary. I also invite you to write to me and tell me your experiences astrologically, what you're feeling as Saturn and Neptune have entered Aries. And also you can connect with me for a session, thegoldenastrologer.com, and click book online, and you can set up a session with me as far as a reading astrologically or Reiki session or anything that could potentially support you in this journey now that things are shifting in a major way in the heavens. It's important to look at these things and where they're going in your astrological chart, because things are going to be changing for each and every one of us. And it's profound, profound, profound work to do right now. So I highly recommend it and advise it, to get your chart done if you haven't gotten it done, if you haven't had it done in a while, and find your way through these astrological changes that we're all experiencing. And if you're interested in expansion mentoring, that's a longer term with me, longer term, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, so that we can work together and I can help you process things more deeply and go through the energetic changes you need to bring you to the next level of becoming. And I've had a lot of conversations about becoming this week, because I was in a master class about those themes, and how becoming is something that we're manifesting our own becoming rather than manifesting a thing, because it's what we want to evolve to. And I can help you do that with my expansion mentoring. Have a beautiful week ahead. Gratitude to each and every one of you for listening. Thank you so much. I love speaking to you every week. Join me on Instagram, The Golden Astrologer, and I will also see you or be with you on this next podcast next week, Sunday the 8th. Have a beautiful week ahead. Gratitude to one and all.